The badge scanner beeped red twice before the guard finally waved her through without checking it a third time. Grant Holloway didn't look up. Corporate visits happened every few months now, ever since Chandler Freight got swallowed by some parent company with a name too long to remember. He'd learned to keep his head down and his clipboard full. Then the warehouse floor went quiet, every forklift idling, every conversation dying mid-sentence. He lifted his eyes and found a woman in a charcoal suit standing at the far end of the floor, two assistants trailing behind her, unable to keep pace. She wasn't looking at the executives. She wasn't looking at the new signage. She was looking directly at him. And her hand had gone still against the folder she carried, the way a person freezes when the ground shifts beneath a memory they thought they buried a long time ago. 19 years earlier, Grant didn't own a warehouse badge or a title of any kind. He owned a two-bay garage behind a rented duplex on the edge of Tacoma, a truck that needed a new alternator, and a 6-year-old daughter named Josie, who still slept with the hallway light on. His wife had died the winter before. An aneurysm, no warning, no time to prepare. Grant went from half a household to the entirety of one almost overnight, working days at a tire shop and evenings fixing whatever small engines the neighborhood brought him. Because a tire shop wage didn't stretch far enough to cover a mortgage, a kid, and grief all at once. He wasn't remarkable. He forgot birthdays until the week of. He burned rice more than he'd like to admit. But he showed up every day for the one small person depending on him to. Late October. Rain coming down sideways, the way it does in the Pacific Northwest. Grant pulled into a gas station 3 blocks from home and saw a girl huddled against the ice machine, knees to her chest, a plastic grocery bag clutched like it held something more valuable than the store's entire inventory. She couldn't have been older than 14. Her shoes were soaked through. She flinched when the automatic door slid open beside her. The way you flinch when you've learned most doors opening near you means someone about to tell you to move along. Grant almost got back in his truck. $11 in his wallet. A daughter waiting on dinner. The math argued its case fast and quiet. Then he thought of Josie, alone in weather like this, and the math lost. Most people would call that the whole story right there. A kind stranger, a cold night, a good deed. It wasn't. It was the first domino in a line that wouldn't finish falling for 19 more years. He crouched a respectful distance away. Rough night to be out here. She didn't answer right away. When she finally did, her accent carried the soft lilt of Manila, worn thin from years away from it. "I'm fine. You don't have to tell me anything," Grant said. "But I've got a truck with a working heater, and I'm not leaving until you're warm. That's not an offer. That's just what's happening now." Her name was Marisol. It came out slowly, the way information does from someone who's learned that giving too much of yourself away is how you get hurt. Over 20 minutes, in a fogged-up truck cab, Grant learned her mother had brought her to the States, chasing a caregiving job that fell through within a year. That her mother died of an illness nobody caught early enough, because neither of them had insurance. That the family looking after Marisol since had decided, without much ceremony, that one more mouth was one too many. She'd been sleeping in laundromats and gas stations for 11 days. Grant called the county the next morning. They gave him a case number and a waiting list. Foster placements move at the speed of paperwork, and paperwork moves slower than winter. "She can't sleep outside while we wait," Grant told the caseworker. "Sir, I understand the sentiment, but there's a process." "I've got a garage," Grant said. "Space heater, a cot, a door that locks from the inside so she feels safe. I'll get it inspected. I'll fill out whatever you need. But she's not spending one more night outside while a form gets stamped." It took 6 weeks and 4 home visits before it became official. In the meantime, Marisol slept under a battered space heater and a second-hand quilt Grant's late wife had made the winter before she passed. And every morning she woke to burnt rice and a 6-year-old narrating her stuffed rabbit's opinions on breakfast. Money stayed tight enough to feel in your teeth. But something quieter was happening underneath the hardship. Something Grant wouldn't fully understand the size of for almost 2 decades. Once Marisol trusted the walls weren't going to disappear from under her. She started doing the dishes unasked, then the laundry, then walking Josie to the bus stop. Because Grant's shift started before sunrise. "You don't have to earn your place here," Grant told her once, catching her scrubbing a pan at 11 at night. I know, she said. I want to. She was quiet. The particular quiet of kids who've had too much taken too fast. But she was sharp in a way Grant noticed first in the fine print, the lease renewal, the caseworker's forms, even the coupon on the back of a grocery flyer. She read all of it, carefully, long before he thought to. Why do you read all that? He asked once. Because the people who hurt families the most, she said, not looking up, usually hide it in the parts nobody bothers to read. She was 15 when she said that. He didn't know it yet, but she just handed him the exact sentence that would save his career, hers, and a warehouse full of strangers' safety, 12 years before any of them needed saving. Grant couldn't give her much. No college fund, no inheritance, no connections. What he gave her was consistency, dinner at 6, a locked door that was hers, a man who showed up to every school conference in his work boots because he didn't own a nicer pair of shoes. The garage stopped being a garage somewhere in those years. He built a real wall, ran proper insulation, put in a window. It became, simply, Marisol's room. The way anything becomes permanent when enough ordinary days stack on top of each other. She earned a scholarship on the strength of a personal essay about paperwork. About 11 days spent learning that some doors only open for people who look a certain way. And about a stranger at a gas station who decided a locked door mattered more than his own wallet did. She left for school with 2 duffel bags and a promise. I'm going to come back and buy you a real garage, she told him on the porch, half joking. Mostly not. I like the one I've got, Grant said. But I'll take the visit. The visits got shorter the way they always do. A holiday here, a phone call there. Marisol went from undergraduate to law school on scholarships and loans she refused to let Grant help with, though he offered every time, though he never had much to offer. She passed the bar in a ceremony he watched from a folding chair in the back row, clapping louder than anyone else in the building. Then the calls thinned out further, not from distance in the heart, but the ordinary distance of 2 people, busy living their own separate lives. Grant didn't mind. He'd never expected repayment. He'd only ever expected her to be warm, dry, and given a fair shot. Life kept moving the way it does when nobody's filming it. He remarried briefly in his 40s to a kind woman named Dana, 3 years that ended without regret, and left him a decent second-hand truck. Josie grew up, moved to Spokane, called on Sundays. When the tire shop finally closed for good, Grant took a maintenance supervisor job at Chandler Freight and Logistics. Good at it the unglamorous way a person is good at something they've done with their hands, their whole life. 8 years into that job, everything under him quietly shifted, and Grant had no idea it was about to cost him almost everything he'd rebuilt. Chandler Freight got bought. A logistics conglomerate called Meridian Vantage, headquartered in Seattle Glass most of the warehouse floor, had never set foot inside. The paperwork promised no disruption to daily operations. The paperwork, as a 15-year-old had once taught him, was never where the real story lived. The real story arrived wearing a blazer onto the warehouse floor like it was armor. Desmond Cray, Meridian's newly installed regional operations director, a man who referred to the loading dock crew as legacy labor, in a tone that made the phrase sound like an apology he had no intention of giving. His first move was a cost restructuring memo, trimming maintenance staff by 40%, dressed in language soft enough to sound humane. Grant's name wasn't on the list yet. His department was cut nearly in half. Its safety inspection budget quietly folded into a line item called operational efficiency. Grant raised it in the first staff meeting under new ownership. You cut inspection frequency on the east conveyor line to save money, he said, and the bearing failure that's been building for 2 months is going to take somebody's fingers before it takes anything else. Cray smiled the smile of a man who had never personally repaired anything in his life. We appreciate legacy expertise, Mr. Holloway, but Meridian runs on data, not gut feeling. The data's in a maintenance log I've kept for 8 years, Grant said. Nobody's read it. Nobody did. 3 weeks later, a bearing seized on the east line during a night shift and jammed a loaded pallet mid-lift. Nobody was hurt. It came close enough that Grant filed the incident through the proper channel instead of Cray's new direct reporting structure, exactly the way policy still technically required. Cray called it insubordination in a meeting Grant wasn't invited to. Within a week, a written notice sat on Grant's desk citing failure to follow updated reporting protocols. The kind of notice that tends to end, eventually, in a door a man walks out of and doesn't walk back through. He read it twice at his kitchen table that night, Josie's old artwork still taped crookedly to the fridge beside a photograph of Marisol's law school graduation, curling at the corner from years of heat off the stove. He didn't call anyone about it. He simply kept doing his job correctly and quietly, and let the review run its course, the way water finds a path even when you can't see where it's heading. What Grant didn't know, what almost nobody in the building knew, was that Meridian Vantage had installed a brand new chief executive 4 months earlier, following a leadership shakeup nobody outside the boardroom saw coming. Her first order in the position had been a full operational audit of every subsidiary Meridian had acquired in the past 2 years. Chandler Freight sat near the bottom of that audit list. It would have stayed there, one line item among dozens, if not for a name that surfaced in an incident report forwarded up the chain for review. Grant Holloway. The new CEO read it twice, the way you reread something to make sure the world hasn't quietly rearranged itself around a coincidence. She pulled the full incident file, then the personnel file. Then she sat very still in her office, looking at a name she hadn't seen written down in almost a decade, and picked up the phone to clear her schedule for a site visit nobody on her team had been expecting. Which brings us back to that warehouse floor, gone completely silent, and Grant Holloway looking up from a clipboard to find Marisol Cruz standing at the far end of it, no longer the girl who used to fold his late wife's quilt into careful thirds, but a woman with the calm, deliberate posture of someone who'd learned exactly how much a locked door could matter. For a moment, neither of them moved. "Ms. Cruz," Cray said, stepping forward with the smile he saved for people above him, "welcome to Chandler Freight. I'd be happy to walk you through our restructuring." "Not yet." Marisol didn't look at him. She crossed the floor instead, past pallet jacks and safety cones, until she stood directly in front of a man 20 years older than the last photograph she carried of him. "You built a real wall in that garage," she said quietly. "I still think about that. How you didn't have to make it feel permanent. You just did it anyway." Grant's throat worked before anything came out. "You cut your hair," he said, and it startled a laugh out of both of them. The kind that comes when 12 years of distance collapses into something smaller and warmer than either of them expected. Cray cleared his throat. "Ms. Brands. Cruz, Mr. Holloway is currently under formal disciplinary review for a reporting violation. I wouldn't want you to feel I'm not here because I feel obligated." Marisol turned to face him fully. Her voice didn't rise. "It didn't need to. I'm here because I pulled every incident report filed against this facility's leadership in the last 6 months, and I read every one of them last night, including the one where a bearing failure you were warned about in writing nearly cost someone a hand. That report was addressed through proper internal review. That report was filed through the original safety channel," Marisol said, "because Mr. Holloway understood, correctly, that a memo restructuring the chain of command doesn't override 8 years of documented maintenance protocol. Show me the disciplinary file you built against him. Today, before lunch." Cray's composure held for exactly a few more seconds before it visibly didn't. The file reflects a pattern of insubordination consistent with, the file reflects a man who wrote down exactly what was wrong, in exactly the way company bylaws still require, and got punished for being right before anyone above him could be embarrassed by it. Marisol let that sit a beat. "I've seen this pattern before, Mr. Cray, usually right before an acquisition's real numbers surface. How much of this quarter's maintenance cut shows up as a bonus line in your division's projections?" He didn't answer. He didn't have an answer that wouldn't hang him with it. Everyone assumed the story stopped there. CEO defends loyal employee, villain gets escorted out, roll credits. It didn't. What came next is the part almost nobody in that warehouse ever found out, and it's the part that mattered most. Marisol turned back to Grant, and for a moment the charcoal suit and the boardroom posture fell away entirely. "I'm ordering a full audit of this division," she said, loud enough for the floor to hear. "Effective immediately. All safety reporting routes back through the original protocol, company-wide. And Mr. Holloway's disciplinary review is closed as of this moment. The incident report itself entered as commendation, not complaint." She paused, something quieter passing behind her eyes. "He taught me that the people who hurt others the most usually hide it in the parts nobody reads carefully." I've spent 12 years reading carefully because of one sentence he said to me when I was 15. I'm not about to stop now, on the one floor where it matters more than anywhere else. Cray was escorted off the premises within the hour, though the real reckoning took 6 more weeks to fully surface. The formal review uncovered exactly what Marisol suspected, a bonus structure quietly tied to headcount and budget cuts, hidden behind language soft enough that most of the board had approved it, without asking what it actually meant. Meridian terminated him before the month was out. The gutted safety protocol was restored across all 9 subsidiaries the following quarter. None of that was the part Grant thought about, walking to the parking lot that evening. What he thought about was Marisol, waiting by his truck the way she used to wait for a ride home from the library, arms crossed against the cold, looking nothing like a chief executive and everything like the girl who used to fold a quilt into careful thirds. "I never came back to buy you a garage," she said. "I know I said I would." "You gave me something better," Grant said. "You gave me proof I did something right, back when I had no idea if I was doing anything right at all." "You did more than one thing right," Marisol said. "You did the only thing that ever actually mattered. You stayed." They stood in the cooling evening a while longer, the loading dock lights flickering on one row at a time, and neither rushed to fill the quiet. Because some silences have finally earned the right to just be comfortable. In the weeks that followed, Grant kept his job, though its shape changed. Marisol created a new safety oversight position built specifically around the kind of documented, decades-deep expertise nobody at Meridian had thought to properly value until it nearly cost someone a hand. He took the promotion on one condition, the only one he ever asked for. "I still want to be on the floor," he told her. "I didn't spend 40 years fixing things to end up behind a desk reading about them." "I'd be worried if you asked for anything else," Marisol said. Josie came down from Spokane for the small, unceremonious dinner Grant threw together to market, burning the rice slightly out of habit more than necessity. Marisol sat at his kitchen table exactly the way she used to as a teenager, elbows on the wood, correcting his seasoning without being asked. Scrolling through old photos on his phone at one point, Grant found one he hadn't looked at in years. Marisol at 15, cross-legged on the garage floor, quilt around her shoulders, reading notes for a school debate she'd insisted on winning. "You know," he said, turning the phone toward her, "I used to worry I wasn't giving you enough. No real house. No real money. Just a garage with a space heater." Marisol looked at the photo a long moment before answering. "You gave me a locked door that was mine," she said. "You gave me a wall you didn't have to build permanent, but built permanent anyway. Everything after that, the scholarship, the degree, the office, that was just me finishing something you started for free, on a night you had $11 in your wallet and every reason to keep driving." Brent didn't have an answer for that. He didn't need one. Some sentences are meant to sit in a room a while before anyone tries to reply. Years later, when people at Meridian Vantage asked Marisol Cruz why the safety division answered directly to the CEO's office instead of buried 3 layers down in operations like every other logistics firm on the coast, she gave the same answer every time, brief and unadorned. "Because someone once taught me that the parts people don't bother reading carefully are exactly the parts that end up hurting somebody. I don't intend to let that happen twice." On the shelf behind her desk, beside photographs of boardrooms and a framed law degree, sat one object that had nothing to do with any of it. A small, cracked ceramic mug. The same one Grant used to burn rice in decades earlier, given to her the week she made partner, with a note in his familiar, uneven handwriting, still keeping the door unlocked. "Come by anytime." She never took it down. She never planned to. Kindness doesn't always announce itself the moment it happens. Sometimes it waits quietly in a converted garage for 12 years, until the person it was given to has grown strong enough and far enough to carry it back to exactly the place it was needed most.